Welcome everyone who's joined. My name is Maureen. I'm very honored to be here today representing TriNet and supporting this event. For those of you who aren't familiar with TriNet, we are one of the largest HR providers in the country. We serve over 17,000 companies across the life science, nonprofit, technology, financial services industries. So I, again, specialize in the life science world, but work with a lot of different companies here in San Diego to help them manage their HR compliance and access great employee benefits for their people, and leverage technology to make their employee experience excellent, which has come in really handy in the world we're living in today. So again, super honored to be here with you all and support this organization. And Fu, I think probably hand it over to you at this point.
Hi everyone, my name is Fu Nguyen. I'm one of the members of ICE Cybersecurity. ICE stands for Integrated Cybersecurity Engine, and not the other ICE. It is my pleasure to be your host and MC today for this first virtual boardroom. The organization that we feel has the most impact in our community is 211 San Diego. They are the unsung hero in San Diego. Day in and day out, they help hundreds and hundreds of families. That said, I want to introduce you to Bill York, the CEO of 211. Bill?
Thank you, Fu. This is my first virtual fundraiser, I have to say, and all the types of fundraising that I've attended over the years for nonprofits. I think this is my first. So thank you for allowing us to be your nonprofit for this month. The 211 dialing code has been on the scene since early 2000 across the country. The FCC passed that for particular use around what we do, and that is making sure that there is a science and a process for matching individuals up to community resources. So we really fulfill the mission by helping people find the immediate long-term relief and long-term relief for various needs. We help them, overcome barriers like having a computer, transportation, childcare, literacy, again, language, just a huge population. And COVID-19 has definitely increased the demand for more people needing access to resources. So when people call 211, we listen, we'll ask questions, we'll work with our clients to create a plan that connects them to programs, we'll cross-referral them to other things that we do, and we actually have a technology that I think ICE is very familiar with that connects 86 nonprofits to a specific client record. So if you think of 211 is a business to client, our CIE, a Community Information Exchange, is actually business to business. So allowing different nonprofits to care coordinate around an individual's specific need. We have other technology projects, and you can always go to CIESanDiego.org to get more information and see how the technology, or you can actually talk to ICE. Ford's very well aware of our CIE project. Look us up, find out more about us. Thank you.
Thank you so much again to you and your staff.
Yeah, we have an amazing team that really has built this, and I think San Diego is unique. It's obvious, like with having groups like this come together, it's a collaborative community. We would not be as successful and been able to build what we have if we didn't live in San Diego. Not everybody has such a community like this. We get to see other 211s in United Ways, and they just don't have those resources or, again, the buy-in like we have been received here. So thanks again.
Yeah, and we're blessed and humbled to be in a position to help you guys. So let me pass this on to Ford, and let's get the show started. Ford?
Thank you, Fu. Well, we're here today to talk about to have a collaborative discussion with experts that have a unique perspective on what risks there are to businesses right now. Some of them are obvious and some are not so obvious. And then also not to just be, the negative side of this, we really want to talk about what opportunities are available to businesses right now and what we're seeing as ways that, that we can help facilitate the bounce back. It's in all of our best interests. It's in the nation and the world's best interest, and we have to help people, and we've got to go recover and find new ways to do it. And we're creating dialogue around that and being part of the conversation and part of the solution. not part of the problem here. I would like to start, however, with a moment of silence for the hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their lives and the families that are affected by this right now. The reason we're here is because of a tragedy and a pandemic. And we're going to just give a few moments here. Thank you very much. And it's, we are having an opportunity to have this conversation because of a tragedy. And it's a very serious thing, but let's create some good out of it. I was told I needed to introduce ICE Cybersecurity as part of this. We provide cybersecurity as a service, delivering holistic, sustainable cybersecurity programs for companies who want to protect their data, systems, employees, and their customers. And it's really about protection and making sure that businesses can be more successful because they're confident in their cybersecurity. And with that, if we could go down the panel and just introduce everybody briefly, and then we'll jump right into it. Start with Kevin.
My name is Kevin Conrad. I'm an audit senior manager serving in Deloitte's life sciences practice here in San Diego, and I also have a role in our national audit leader. I'm serving the life sciences industry as a whole, and so I'm here to bring a little bit of the financial reporting perspective, a little bit of digital controllership, as well as just some of the risks and opportunities that Deloitte as a firm has kind of been publishing and seeing across the nation. And with that, kind of weaving that into the positive outlook that Ford had mentioned before. While we have some risks here, there's definitely some opportunities. I'm going to keep that as our primary focus. I myself am kind of that glass half full person, so I want to make sure that we keep that message in our community as well. Fantastic,
thank you. I'll go to Nancy.
Hi everyone, Nancy Mancilla, CEO and co-founder of ISOS Group. We're based here in San Diego. Our work is focused primarily on what's called ESG, or non-financial disclosure, so environmental, social, and governance disclosure. Our practice is focused primarily on the education and training side, the advisory work, and then the external assurance side. So I'm bringing that spin to things.
Fantastic, thank you. Good, Jeff.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Dennis. I'm a partner at the law firm Newmeyer Dillion. I'm the head of our privacy and data security practice group. So obviously I deal in privacy, regulatory compliance, cybersecurity, data security, and the like. And so I will be playing again the evil attorney role today and trying to balance out all you optimists out there. So thanks for having me, Ford.
Thank you, Jeff. We always have to have one in the bunch. All right, and Justin.
I'm Justin Vogel, Senior Vice President with Bridge Bank. Been in banking and commercial lending for 20 years, and just bringing kind of the banking and finance side to the conversation.
All right, thanks. So let's start, go down the group. Kevin, you brought up a really good point. Is it a glass half full or glass half empty perspective you bring? And I think you said glass half full. And I'd love to hear just quickly from the rest of the panel. What do you think? Jeff?
Thanks, Ford. Look, at this point, I'm glass half empty. I think that there is a ton of risk that we're dealing with right now as we continue through this pandemic. It's not over. We have a long ways to go, I'm afraid. And when you've been litigating as long as I have, you learn to look for risks, and I see them everywhere. I know we'll talk about them as we go forward, but right now, for the time being, I'm half empty.
All right, fair enough. Nancy?
I don't ever really understand which way to go. Isn't half full and half empty at the same point. I'm really just at a very neutral position on everything.
Fair enough. Justin, how do you see it?
I'm very, very cautiously optimistic. I think there is some upside, but there's a whole lot of unknowns. So I can definitely find myself at moments leaning more toward Jeff's position.
Fair enough. It's a crazy world we're living in right now. Let's. I'd like to hear from everybody just to set the stage a little bit. How has COVID-19 changed the way in which each of your firms operates? And there's some obvious ones, but maybe share some of the ones that are some changes that aren't so obvious as well. We'll start with Nancy.
We've always worked virtually, and so we're really familiar with using these online web-based systems and working in real time with our partners and clients. But that work has gone into hyper mode with the COVID, because now our clients are no longer commuting to the office. They have extra time and bandwidth to dedicate towards the sustainability work. And we're actually having to show them how to work in this virtual arena more so. So we never expected to have to do that. And that's a interesting add-on feature to things.
Okay. Jeff, how are you guys seeing it from the law firm perspective?
Well, I mean, not surprisingly, it was a massive change for law firms across the country. The old school law firm model is, you're in the office from 8 to 5 at least. Heavy paper, a lot of in-person meetings, and that's changed dramatically. Obviously, with the work from home, we're trying to teach us old dogs new tricks. And it's become very interesting. You've got the courts closed, so from the litigation side, that's closed things down quite a bit, slowed us down quite a bit. Now you have things that, like the Supreme Court is actually online. Never in a million years did I ever think that we could actually listen to Supreme Court arguments online, but it's happening, and courts all over the country are following suit. So it's definitely a change and a new normal for us. Personally, I was dealing with had conversations with many GCs, in-house GCs, about their privacy and regulatory compliance. And almost overnight, all of the GCs that I've been working with became employment attorneys, because there were just so many employment issues that come with the virus and with the work from home environment. So that has also changed. Now it's turned a little bit. Folks are getting back to privacy, cybersecurity, regulatory compliance, but it is all the GCs that I know that are in-house have had their hands ridiculously full for the last 3 months.
Justin, on the banking lending side, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're all working from home, have been for the last couple of months, although our locations in different states have been open for a while now, and especially in places like Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, things like that. But I would say, just from an operational perspective, we definitely, when this all when the stay-at-home order, shelter-in-place order all went into effect, there was definitely a reaction within the bank to shift from a growth and origination mode to a very quick identification of where the gaps in the portfolio might be and things like that. And we've I think shored that up quite a bit and are cautiously looking at new deals again. But that was definitely the initial shift internally, was all hands on deck, making sure we're shoring up any gaps in the existing portfolio. And then, we had PPP come through. That was an interesting experience. And now we have the forgiveness for PPP coming next month. So there's definitely some changes in the banking world for sure.
All right, I've got some more questions for you later on that to dig in a little more depth. Kevin, in the audit world, and what you guys have seen at Deloitte, you're not showing up and doing the traditional, darken the boardroom with blue suits and audit. How's that working with you guys?
It's been an experience, I'll say. Shifting to a virtual environment was kind of put your money where your mouth is opportunity. You hear about, we can probably move some of this virtual. We can digitize this a bit, or maybe we can move to electronic delivery for supporting documents and things like that. And being able to respond as quickly as I think we did, given the size that we are, is pretty impressive. I think it was like a light switch for a lot of folks to make that overnight adjustment. I don't know about the rest of everyone, but when I think it was about mid-March is when we started to enter into this work from home phase, and we've been in it ever since. And at least so far, I don't think that there's any plans for us to return to an office environment until at least after Labor Day. And of course, that remains to be seen based on how the pandemic continues here in the near future. I'd also like to give a shout out to the various companies that have also made this shift and helped work with us, as well as I'm sure with all the other providers on setting up Zoom calls in place of regular conference meetings, or missing out on some of that collaborative in-person casual conversation that used to be so essential to all of our day-to-day, business lives, and forcing us to kind of rethink how we can stay in touch with each other and communicate those needs in various work streams and deliverables has been eye-opening. But I think it's been positive, and I think we're going to see some pretty interesting changes to not only the talent model that a lot of companies will deploy, but I think the talent model going forward. I think it was probably maybe a swifter kick into disrupting the workplace than we originally thought. But I think there's a lot of good things that we can take away from it. And you've seen, some of the largest tech companies have already started to move towards that. With, I think Twitter now basically is I think permanent work from home as an example. And some of the other tech companies are, looking to employ talent across the country and not just in their geographic location of their office. So it's been an interesting experience, to say the least.
I got some more questions for you as well about, as we go through this, and I may have to run through it. We're starting to see the first wave of audits, and normal activities that are happening, and it's gonna be interesting to see how that works, being 100% remote. As we're starting to transition back into the office, I think each of you have got, we're all at a different place on that. What are you seeing as the risks that are starting to emerge as we go back to into the office and easing the work from home environment and mandates? I was looking at one statistic this morning, and it said that 64% of Americans would blame the company, not the hacker, for a loss of personal data. And as the rules change and as there's shifts, that seemed, I've seen chaos, I've seen really well planned transitions, and maybe each of you could opine on what do you think the top risks are that we're going to face as we start bouncing back from this work from home and shelter in place mandate. Let's go back reverse order. Start with Kevin.
Sure. So one of the challenges I think that we're going to continue to see, at least from like a clinical stage development company side, is how do we manage lab space and access to that lab space if social distancing and mask coverings and things like that are still going to be required, and how are you able to safely conduct that ongoing research in a way that'll both have employees feeling safe to do that and comfortable to put themselves back there, as well as and Jeff will probably speak to this a bit more, is just what does that mean as an exposure to the company if you have people operating in a physical environment. So I imagine we're going to see quite a bit more challenges on at least the lab and the research side. And then from a traditional office environment, I think we'll probably see, some roles just may never repatriate back to a traditional office environment. I think there's some opportunity there for some roles to kind of stay in that remote sense. So it'll be interesting to see who does what and when. And I think there's quite a few people that are sitting on the sidelines kind of looking left or right to see what other organizations and companies are going to do and build their plans from there. I think it's a bit of the Wild West in terms of what's going to make the most sense and how is that going to work. And then again, from an opportunities perspective, that allows companies that may not have looked for a talent pool in other locales or regions, that they can now consider those positions if they're going to be moving away from the traditional show up at a desk type environment. I think it's going to be an interesting one, and I'm curious to see who's going to be the first major player on the scene to set that trend and how the data follows that. All right.
So I'll toss it over to Jeff here. You talked about some privacy risks and this is your bailiwick. Test, for instance, screening employees. Temperature screening of employees. I read somewhere that there's a data privacy risk in some of the intelligent scanners that are out there right now, and some of the systems that companies are using to collect data. What are you seeing as some of the big risks as people go back to work?
Yeah, Ford, I really group it into sort of two different groupings. One is health and safety is one issue, and the second would be a cybersecurity issue. The health and safety, there are just such a plethora of employment issues which arise with employees going back to the office. And how are you protecting those employees? Are you doing temperature screening? Are you requiring them to get some sort of testing? Do you give them, a questionnaire and ask them to fill in the blanks? The EEOC came out last week and said that employers are not allowed to require antibody tests for COVID-19 as part of the return to work. So there are going to be a lot of challenges. And, the bigger question becomes, what do you do with that data? Are you going to keep the data? Are you going to dispose of it? How do you protect it? That if you are collecting private health information from folks and it's not anonymized, that is some of the most sensitive personal information you can collect out there. And it is ripe for the taking and will be an attractive target for the bad guys. So I think companies need to spend some time thinking about exactly what they want to do, because it's important to protect your employees, and you also have to think about visitors that are coming in. You need to be able to protect your employees and your visitors and protect the health of your company. But what are you doing with that information? How are you, keeping it as minimal as possible and protecting it as best you can? So I think there's a big privacy and health issue. On the other hand, I worry, and Ford, I'd love to hear your input on this, is the fact that I'm very concerned that folks are going to be bringing malware back into the office. We've all been working remotely with our laptops hooked into probably, mostly unsecured routers. Who knows what's on our laptops? How do you protect those when they're coming back onto your physical server presence and making sure that you're not, the first time you log in, you're not, sending some worm into the system that is going to cause a data breach and really mess things up. So those are the two things that I'm most concerned about right now. And I'm seeing some positive movement in how folks are dealing with it, but particularly on the cybersecurity side, that's your area. I'd love to hear, Ford, what you're thinking.
That's really my top concern is the ransomware and malware that's lying in wait, on people's laptops sitting at home for the day that they have access to their network. A lot of VPNs don't allow great access, and there's a lot of companies that have done good things to segregate their employees' computers as they remote in. But when you come back in the network and you might have, let's say, unfettered access to, or you might have access to a lot more systems, a lot more data, that's really what the attackers are waiting on, in my opinion. I saw something today that the average time to detect and contain a breach is 279 days in a recent IBM study. And that just means that the bad guys, get on your machine, they wait until they have an opportunity, and then they pick the most opportune time for them, which is the most inconvenient time for you. And I'm afraid that we're going to see some big ransomware hits and some data breaches out of this, unfortunately. You can be prepared. There's a lot of things you can do. But I think with all the rush, the change and the speed of change right now, it's going to be a challenge for a lot of organizations. I'm unfortunately glass half empty on that topic. Nancy, are you seeing? What do you think from a board reporting and an executive, reporting conversation level? What are you seeing as the conversation there that organizations are thinking about? As they bring people back?
There are just so many aspects to this. I think, much like the example that we just heard where some of the ICT companies are not even talking about coming back to the office. We don't have one client company that is even considering bringing their people back. And if they are talking about the health aspects and how they're going to take precautions to try and limit any exposure health-wise. But there's so many different issues, that are coming to the forefront. One, we have, like you all are very familiar with, the information security or cybersecurity front. All the IT teams had to jump into a new space that they maybe had been hoping to help solve for years, but then they all of a sudden had the green light and were required to kind of go into overdrive overnight. And so, a lot of our client companies are saluting those teams for doing that and making it easy for the employees to work from home and to ensure that the systems would be safeguarded. Another issue which has been touched upon is the health and safety aspects of operations and all the employees, the workforce plus their families, and thinking through that. The different innovative working techniques, of course. When we think about boards, like you mentioned the boardroom, we're hearing that there's just much more board involvement now. And because of making it virtual, they're able to be more nimble and more present to provide feedback and to help with risk detection and strategic guidance for the companies. So that's interesting. Another aspect of our work, which just we had an aha moment about yesterday, which I don't know why we didn't think about it. I think we were in emergency mode, for the last few months, or last 6 months now. But it's related to the greenhouse gas emissions. So all of our clients, we help them develop their greenhouse gas inventory and think about how to manage those impacts versus tracking the data. Most all these companies, their largest footprint is in what we call the scope 2 emissions, so the purchased electricity. And if they're not using their buildings, and they've gotten some great I guess traction on capturing that data, there's going to be huge swings in the trends moving forward, and they might actually have to just freeze what they've been doing to capture that data for this year because of everyone being at home. And then next year, when we look at the information, the heavier side might be in scope 3 emissions, which is upstream and downstream impacts. So the impacts associated with them with their workforce working from home. So that's just an interesting slant on it from our side that I don't think our industry is really even touched on just yet.
Wow, that's certainly, yeah, there's a couple of things there that I've never even thought of in terms of the greenhouse emissions and the building use and whatnot. That's really interesting. I want to hear some more about that later. I've got a couple more minutes here, and I wanted to wrap up with Justin and get back to you talked about PPP and EIDL and Main Street programs, and let's leave on hopefully on a positive note. From a lending side, are you seeing growth and companies being spurred into new directions, positive directions, based on some of that and new opportunities, obviously, to put capital to work as people are coming back to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think PPP for those companies that were able to get it, it was a successful tool. It definitely inspired a lot of companies to keep their employees on, keep their salaries at the same level, even hire new employees if they could make use of the funds. And yeah, so I think it was a helpful program. We'll see how many of the companies are able to get it forgiven here in the next couple of months. Main Street is still a huge question mark on whether how that's going to roll out, how many banks are going to participate. There's still a lot of new information coming out from the Treasury on that, and so which I think could potentially have a more meaningful impact because it's geared toward bigger companies that employ a lot more people. So we'll have to see how that plays out, and if when those final rules come out, although as we saw with PPP, the initial loans started going out a couple months ago, and SBA released new guidance this morning on stuff. So they're kind of changing the rules as the game's being played. So we'll see how that stuff goes.
We all have, we're talking about exit plans as we go back into the new coming out of work from home, and what are the ways that we're going to get back to normal. What can you share some of what your plans are, where your plans are right now, knowing that obviously this is an iterative process and we're going through, feeling this out as we go. What are you guys seeing out there as the key elements, or any innovative ideas around how to get back to work?
I'd say it's very industry and company dependent. I think the services industry, the professional advisor industry, will probably continue to be agile and dynamic to how that's going to shake out, whether that's a mixture of doing everything virtually, keeping everybody at home, whether that's limited rotations in the office, maybe there's a schedule, an on-off schedule between, what teams or what groups can be in an office environment to maintain, a safe environment is going to be a challenge. I think there's still some pieces there, as well as whether or not your talent wants to come back, and if they're comfortable with that, and how that plays into some of the decision making. I think, and then of course, the designation of essential versus non-essential, and how do you comply with all the different requirements and navigate, a regulatory landscape that evolves seemingly every other day. In terms of who we've got, guidance coming from the county, we have guidance coming from the state, we have guidance coming from, the federal level, at different stages, and how do you navigate that? So I think we're going to be, it's going to be a little bit of cat and mouse. We'll see some companies are going to be trying some stuff. We'll get some data from that and see how that works. And I think from there, it's just going to be a case by case. I don't think there's any one perfect way to do it. I think there's a lot more factors at play now that I think people are a lot more cognizant of, especially if you think of, some folks have, high risk families maybe, or are coming from a high risk community, and how do you navigate, accommodating that with also meeting your business mission, and your clients' needs. So I think we're going to see some interesting changes, and I think an emphasis on this virtual environment, Zoom meetings, team meetings. I think another one out there is 8x8. There's all kinds of collaborative tools that I think are helping us, navigate this and maybe alleviate some of that immediate desire to go back, so to speak.
I'm on Justin. What's your thoughts?
I don't disagree with Kevin. I think service industry is able to kind of still work from home. I mean, I've been just as busy as ever over the last couple of months, if not more so than when before all this happened. But our business has a long sales cycle. So most of what I'm living off of today is stuff that I've been, chasing for the last 6 months. The big question mark is going to be, we were talking about it a little bit in our breakout, the lack of ability to do large conferences and networking sessions and things like that. You can still go gather the information that you would normally get from those networking conferences. But, we talked about the happy hour full of 500 people in a ballroom, maybe a little bit socially lubricated with some cocktails and meeting each other and shaking hands and getting to be friends before they do business together. That's gone for the foreseeable future. And so what are the long-term ramifications of that fallout? So who knows, 6-9 months from now, are those conferences coming back? Maybe. Probably nowhere near the attendance they were this past year. So that'll be the interesting piece, to see how long it takes for those types of things to come back at the same scale they were at before.
And I think too, right?
Yeah, that's that.
On that, you've got the impact of the traditional roadshow financing model, right? You would typically, as a company, if you're looking to raise that next round of financing or funding, you'd be engaging with your various partners, or leveraging your network to get connected with your next potential investor, having those conversations, meetings in person, maybe demonstrating your product or your science, in doing a lot of that. And that traditional kind of roadshow model of traveling, across the country, even to different states and different cities, is changing and evolving, and kind of impacting the way that what you would see traditionally from a capital standpoint is going to be something that's going to be, I think, ripe for innovation, and we'll see how long that push lasts.
Yeah. Judy is perfect example here. She runs an organization that lives and breathes on hosting large scale events. And, we were fortunate that ACG San Diego had their big event right before this whole thing blew up. That was 2 weeks later. It probably wouldn't happen.
Would you like me to speak to that? I could tell you. So we were pretty fortunate, as you said, and it was our pilot one of that scale, because we do our events monthly, but that was our first capital conference. And We exceeded our attendee goals for the first year. We had 322 people. We thought we'd get maybe 200, 250. And I think Justin would say, you know, we made some fans that intent. We're like, we're coming back next year, and we were very super enthusiastic.
It was fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But now here we are, and we're about to sign a contract for February 2021 at the Marriott. Y'all can come. And, you know, but I'm on chapter calls. We have 59 chapters, and I'm on with my peers weekly a couple times, and we're all talking about this. And it changes from week to week. And unfortunately, some of my peers, in fact, San Francisco chapter, had their similar event to mine in March, and they had to cancel it. And, you know, it's devastating. There's a lot of so much, you know, even putting together a webinar like this takes a lot of time and attention and care. And you can imagine, you know, the longer and bigger conference, you know, more involved. So a lot of my peers are switching to virtual events. And if you're a member, some of you are my members, and I'm glad to see you all here today. If you've been attending the member summit that Global's putting on, it's the first time I've been attending a whole virtual 3-day summit for 2,000 people with the different functionality, webinars, and interactions. So it's interesting technologically to see how they're filling the gaps to, you know, to accommodate what you're expressing. But there's nothing like face-to-face handshake, you know, fist bump or elbow bump now, you know.
Yeah, it's like the, you know, to do business in a social setting like that. I mean, what's the anatomy of sale? First thing is you do business with people you like.
Right.
And so how do you get to know people and really, you know, read the body language? And Justin, I imagine for when you're talking about lending or investing, you know, looking somebody in the eye and really seeing body language and getting to trust people on both sides of the table is critical. I imagine that's going to be pretty challenging to approximate that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even like to your point or to Kevin's point, I mean, the idea of not only a roadshow with investors, but, you know, especially if you're going in and we're looking at doing a sizable lending relationship with, like, you know, if it's a tech company, that's one thing because most of their stuff is all virtual, right? But if you're looking at lending to a large manufacturing operation, I mean, going and taking a walking tour of the facility is absolutely necessary to get a key on, you know, what are their inventory levels like? What is their organizational structure like? All of those things. And you just can't do that right now. It's a very strange environment.
And on Jeff, are you, from the law firm perspective, you know, has it changed the attorney-client relationship in the way that you do work, or is it less impactful for you guys?
No, it's absolutely changed it. I mean, just as Kevin and Justin have talked about, and Judy as well, is, you know, everything we want to do is, you know, we're all salespeople. Whether we want to admit it or not, we're just selling different things. As a lawyer, I'm selling myself. I'm selling my services and my ability to solve problems. And, you know, without the ability to have face-to-face meetings, it's really challenging. You know, you can't sit down and have lunch or coffee or go out to drinks with someone and really have an open, honest conversation. It's always a little stilted and awkward when you're doing it on video chat or video conference. And now we're all getting used to it, but it's still, there's just something lacking when you don't have that human sort of touch and interaction, I think. And so the problem is, especially for lawyers, and, you know, something I struggle with, is how do you stay relevant? You know, how do you stay front of mind for folks? How do you stay like I said, relevant? And so whether it's, you know, you're doing blogging, you're doing webinars. I mean, one of the things we've tried to do is we're trying to put on as many free events for our clients as we can. You know, we're taking the hot topics of the day, we're throwing it out there for folks and just sort of giving them, you know, free advice. And again, hoping that we can help out. You know, it's partly to keep ourselves relevant. It's partly to give back to the community. I think we all have responsibility to do that in trying times. And I think that's a good way to do it. And if you can mix, you know, BD in with it, yeah, all the better. It's a win-win.
Right on. Nancy, you got anything to add on that? I attended my first 100% virtual board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it was certainly it was certainly different. There were some elements that were the same, but it went in some directions I didn't expect.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. like I mentioned when we started the call, our work has been virtual since day one. We only recently got a small office so that we could collaborate at times, or so that our junior team members could learn from me hands-on, just kind of pick up and watch me while we're on, our back-to-back calls and meetings. So it's a little bit different in that sense. And, for years, we would talk about how handling the meetings this way would not only minimize environmental impacts, but it increases efficiency, because when you're limited to an hour and a half max with these key decision makers, and you have to be really on point with the conversation. We don't get to go to lunch. We don't get to go have coffee and then schmooze, and that means that we could take on a larger volume of clients, larger volume of work. We can service more people than we would if we were putting a lot of time into all of that and traveling back and forth to meet with them in person. So I kind of in a weird world, somehow things have caught up to what our norm has been. And I would say, if you all, find your niche or your sweet spot in that, I promise it's more effective in that sense. And the same with like even our colleagues, we can then schedule when we want to have conversations about our kids and the dog, but during work, we're on point with our work. So I think, and also just working interactively in real time, like using like Google Docs or whatever, then you don't have to waste the time of going back and forth to, manage version control with the document. Everybody sees things right away. You correct things. It can just go to approval. So that's kind of my thought on that. And in terms of the business side, I mean, we've never seen such a surge in demand for ESG related work in our whole history. Yes, we're spending a good decade building the market, but it's there. And I think under this pressure, kind of to that, what's the positive side or the positive light to this? There's definitely that rebel spirit that comes through in our culture, and, wanting to stand up and wanting to be part of the change, and wanting to, like we've had CEOs calling us over the past couple of weeks, particularly with the social injustice issues, and them saying, look, I'm an old white man in a CEO position. I feel awful. I want to be a part of the solution. I don't want to be, dragging my feet. I'm here. I'm open-minded. I want to learn. And that's incredibly enlightening, and to see that that's a possibility and that we can enter kind of a greater renaissance from this. I'm hopeful. There's to your first question about the glass half full or half empty. I'm definitely hopeful that the process will be a bit of a struggle for everyone, but on the others, once we get to the other side, it should be better.
Yeah, you brought up a good point about the collaboration and the immediate updates in Google Docs. I've experienced that, especially in the tech field, when we're working with a lot of people who are let's say introverted as a stereotype, always being on a Zoom call or a Teams call. We have these collaboration tools that are on every single interaction. Yeah. And Bill, I think you probably concur with this, is that making that shift and working from home and having everything be this collaborative, there are some real benefits to that, because we can just bring up an article or a diagram or a system or a demo or whatever right there, and we have all of these options available to us in the conversation, where we're not fumbling around with a screen or kind of drawing things on a whiteboard. So I think there are some benefits there as well. Yeah. We got some questions coming in, and let's go through them so we can get to them. First one is from Matt Hansen, and this is for you, Justin. How is lending these days with post-COVID financials being a drag on actual business metrics? So if I interpret that correctly, Matt, you're asking about how has the impact of post-COVID financials, how has that impacted the lending, the lenders? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's that is the new paragraph that is at the very top of all of our loan presentations right now, right? Is there's a very brief summary on what's the request, and then the very next thing is COVID impact and COVID response, and it's the biggest thing that we talk about is how is this company impacted by it? How is their industry impacted by it? Is their supply chain? Is their customer base? All of that, and then what are they doing differently? Are they having to reduce staffing? Are they, if most of their sales came through conferences and industry trade events, what are they doing to develop new sales going forward? So we're definitely having to address those things, and anything that is an obvious industry that is taking the brunt of this. So hospitality, restaurants, anything tied to the travel, oil and gas, those are just automatic right now. And until there's more clarity going forward, it's a non-starter.
Makes sense. Uncertainty reigns. Maureen from TriNet asks, what are you seeing for the whole panel? What are you seeing as the biggest challenge for your SMB clients as they return to the workplace or readjust?
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, SMBs are in a tough spot. You've got limited resources, but you've got all the same problems that the big players do in the space. One of the things that I'm seeing SMBs doing, which seems to be fairly effective, is reaching out to trusted advisors to get some assistance. That you are, every SMB needs to know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of companies in the exact same space that you are. And I think you can spend some time looking around at what other folks are doing, talking to advisors to see what is working and what is not working, as opposed to trying to, start from scratch and reinvent the wheel. That's one of the, I think one of the upshots of this whole thing is as we've mentioned before, collaboration. In the sense, my hope is that we come out of this with, more of a sense of, hey, we're a community. We're all in this together. We all need to be rowing in the same direction. And so I encourage our SMB clients to really, reach out to people that they trust. And most people are willing to help, even, with or without charge, but it's worth whatever it costs you. Because you don't want to, what you don't want to do is try to reinvent the wheel and make the same mistake that 50 other companies have already made. I always say, don't learn from your own mistakes, learn from others' mistakes. It's much more effective that way.
Cheaper too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't get as much work, so that's always a good thing for you guys. Don't quote me to my partners. Thank you.
All right, Kevin, you want to, Justin, Nancy, you guys have something to say on the SMB question, challenges facing SMBs?
I think that was a great response.
Yeah, seek advice where you can get it. That's what, and where you can get it for free and from people that know what they're talking about, that have been around for a while. I would say that's probably the biggest challenge is, it's been so long since we've had a recession that there's so many companies out there that have been around for, you could have been in business for 10 years and never been really through a down cycle. And then all of a sudden you get hit with the, worst case scenario type of a recession. So, try and find somebody that was at least around and went through the 2008 crash. They can at least give you some guidance. If nothing else, the experience that it will get better eventually.
And to re-leverage and reconnect with your network, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of people out there that, to Jeff and Justin's point, there's a lot of advisors out there that have seen or have experienced these things, or can connect you to someone who has. And especially in San Diego, in our business community here, that tends to be a lot more open and collaborative. There's going to be someone who's willing to extend that helping hand, and just being able to raise your hand and say, I'm looking for that help. I think there's a lot of people looking to respond to that, especially to think about those traditional avenues of mixers or happy hours or networking events or other areas that you would normally go and seek that advice, or maybe make it as a goal to find someone to connect with in that space. It's different now, but I think it's still there. I think people are still definitely eager and ready and willing to help.
Good one. And I think I would see the converse in this is that SMBs are better positioned to be nimble and pivot, and take advantage of opportunity that may present itself. So I think there's equal, I see that as almost a glass half full for issue for the smaller end of that SMB that have resources. They're not, frail, and can actually execute a pivot. We'll go on to Kevin. You were talking about some of this in your response to the last question. So we'll continue with you. Is there any other innovations? The question from Steve: what innovations, pivots in marketing or lead generation have you seen, and are people doing? How are you creating new relationships and going out to get new business? Justin, we heard your thoughts on this. Kevin, you had some ideas there. Reconnecting with network. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I think I think that there's a lot of different professional service firms, including ourselves, that are putting out regular updates, whether that's through hour-long webinars, whether that's through pre-recorded, panelist type environments, like what we're doing right now is a perfect example of that. There's going to be a different way of doing it, but that it's not impossible. It's harder to invite someone to go for a beer when nobody is open and able to serve. It's definitely cut off one of our easiest avenues to connect. But there's tons of stuff going on with virtual presentations, virtual conferences. Whether that also includes breakout rooms or mixers. If anything, actually, some of the smaller breakout rooms, even though Zoom can be, a little bit difficult at first, maybe a little awkward, it's almost easier because you're in smaller groups at first. You're in groups of 5, 6 or less. You can get a chance to everybody have a seat at the table, so to speak. So I think it's helping in that regard, but it requires a little bit more, I'd say, drive and creativity than it did before. And I don't think there's really a one size fits all. I think it's, instead of pounding pavement now, I think we're all pounding LinkedIn and keeping our contact list refreshed. But then also, figuring out ways to just touch base with people. Not even from a business perspective, but just keeping close with your fellow colleagues out in the marketplace and just understanding that needs are shifting all the time, and how do you stay close? Is it now a phone call versus a meeting at the bar instead of a round of golf, that kind of thing. It's a challenge. It's definitely
golf
a challenge.
Courses are open, Kevin. Golf courses are open.
There's my limitation. I'm an aspiring golfer, currently working my way from the putt up.
That's actually one of the only ways I'm getting to see people, so it works out.
That's good. I
totally agree. Doing it over the phone, especially with people that are out of the area, right? People that you would normally see at a conference, when the conference comes up, instead of just saying, oh, well, I don't get to see anybody, like reach out and talk to the people that you would normally see at that conference.
Right. Nancy, you said that things are really busy for you right now. Is there any secret to your success that you can share, or any tips that you see that are particularly working for you?
I really have no clue how that. I think we've been pretty nimble, and we took a very grassroots effort from day one and just made friends everywhere, connected with those groups, connected with like the local B Corp community or Business for Good community, or different universities. We partnered with universities from the start because we thought that would, if we could provide education to like master's degree students that complemented what they were learning in the class, that would help enable a new workforce. And we've seen that, come about through now most major corporations have a chief sustainability officer. So I would say just be creative as possible and just make friends everywhere. And those people, they'll remember you. It might not be a quick turnaround in terms of locking in a job, but they eventually come around. And we never led with the idea of let's meet people and hope that they sign a contract with us. It was more a mission-driven orientation. And I think people see that and they see the excitement and they're drawn to that. And so, and then you're always pleasantly surprised when people call you or knock on the door or the digital door. So I mean, that's all I can say, and just that the market is right now for this type of work. We're starting to see traction in the like stock exchanges, and then also within the investor community. And so when they see that companies that have gone down the sustainability or ESG path can outperform their competitors who haven't, then that's pretty telling. And again, back to our culture of being competitive and creative. And I think the companies, they want to know why they're not, listed on top, and they want to make it happen. So there are a lot of different driving forces. We just happen to be in a good place, so we got in at a good time, and yeah, it's helped. I feel blessed right now, honestly. We wake up every morning just feeling grateful because we know a lot of people are suffering.
It sounds like from the consensus here is that it's, selling is still selling, is that, and if you're going to, if you're talking about networking and generating revenue, it's a full contact sport, and it takes an average of, I read somewhere recently that it was 13 touches from the point that you meet someone before the point that you end up deciding to do business together. And that seems like it's right. I believe it. Question for all panelists: have you noticed any clients shifting views during this pandemic to incorporate more sustainable business practices and reporting measures? And Madison, if it's okay, I'm going to expand that question a little bit and talk about what do you see as sustainable competitive advantage and sustainable practices that people are adopting right now? Not just limited to the reporting and things. Jeff, I'm going to pick on you first, because we've always talked about compliance and privacy practices as a competitive advantage. And I read a stat this morning that said 97% of companies have seen benefits, including competitive advantage or investor appeal, coming from investing in privacy. We're seeing it all over. What are you seeing out there, and what do you think about that?
Well, in terms of regulatory compliance, we are certainly moving as a society into a place where we're placing a whole lot more value on control of our personal information, and so you see with the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, for example, there are new rules and regulations that are coming down quarterly from both our state government. The federal government may eventually figure out how to do it. And obviously the EU with the GDPR has been at the forefront for quite a while. And what I encourage companies to do is, rather than gripe about the fact that you actually have to, do these particular items and meet these regulations, tout that you've done it, right? I mean, use it as a competitive advantage. Let your customers know that you are interested in protecting their personal information, because it is becoming expected more and more with every passing day that you'll be doing that. And I think companies that don't embrace that and aren't doing it are going to be left behind, particularly if they have a situation where you have some sort of data breach and there's no reasonable security in place. And I think I'm seeing more and more companies utilize the requirements that are at hand to build a competitive advantage and use it to their own benefit.
And to add to that, I would say, there's always the opportunity to promote what changes you've made from a supply chain perspective, from understanding, well, am I particularly exposed in this one location or another that the pandemic is stressing? Is that gonna cause me to have to move things around? And how can I take that and say, this is how we responded as a company, to both rethink and evaluate our position and strategy, kind of pushing that corporate and social governance responsibility that we're seeing, get increased emphasis and focus, across the charts. It's not limited to any one industry, I don't think.
I don't know, Justin, you seen any tech trends or any kind of banking trends that are sustainable advantage that people are taking?
I think that we're seeing a great example of, the opposite of rising tides raises all boats, right? There were a lot of companies that looked like they were doing really, really well because everybody was doing really, really well. And a shift like this shows those that had just the stronger business model, the discipline to do things right even when it was easy, and now they're benefiting while maybe their competitors weren't as disciplined, didn't have the strength of the balance sheet, didn't have their expenses under control. And when revenue takes a big hit, their competitors are falling back, and now they're capturing everything, you know? So the strong companies, the companies that were doing things the right way before all this hit, are just going to do even better now. Now that their competition that was maybe a little weaker is falling back.
Yeah, I think Warren Buffett said the falling tide exposes who's swimming without clothes on. When the tide goes out, you see who's standing naked. Yeah, that's right. Nancy, we're going to wrap this up with you. What do you think about this sustainability question?
There's so much that can be done, and makes our heads crazy every day. It's like a spider web of items, and our job is to try and sort through it all and to draw the correlation and to create the strategies around that, and then of course performance measures. But it seems like most companies, whether they're small, privately held, or publicly traded, have drinking the Kool-Aid to some degree. There's also a shift in leadership, and that's telling. A lot of companies also understand that their consumers want more sustainable companies or brands. They don't want to purchase something that they know they will inherit negative impacts from. So if companies haven't started down the path, there are a lot of great resources out there. You mentioned the B Corp community. I would say that's a number one to go to for all types of organizations. And that would be a nice primer for, you know, what can be done. And then just take baby steps. You know, you don't have to take the rocket launcher to the sustainability universe, you know, in one go. It all, change takes time. So just get started down the path, and you'll be pleasantly surprised when you look back.
Thank you. Those are very wise words. I really appreciate that. All right. Well, with that, we ran a little bit over, but I think it was worth it. Thank you very much, everybody who came, and everybody who attended and contributed, and to the panelists. Thank you for your time and your brain power on this one. With that, I will end my remarks and turn it over to Fook.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you got some great nuggets of knowledge that you can bring back to the team and then incorporate into your strategy. If you need to get in touch with any of the speakers today, please go ahead and directly message them, or talk to us and we can connect you to them. Thank you for sponsors, to the sponsors and the donors to contribute into 211. For those leaders that are watching this, leaders of companies that are watching this and want to help raise money for your local 211, please reach out to us and we can help guide you, or at least point you in the right direction. So stay safe and happy social distancing. See you next month. Bye.